toi.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast.
Yo, yo, yo.
It is Molly.
And Luke.
And this week, we are in the 11th week of counterculture, and we are talking about the gospel and social media.
Mm-hmm.
So we had Kreger with us yesterday, and Kreger is one of our faithful ministry partners going on several years now.
It's true.
But one that we appreciate him just because he's able to communicate things in ways that we all connect with, and it really cuts us to the heart. So
Sorry I couldn't be there.
yeah, Luke was in Seattle in the rain.
Rainy Seattle.
Sleepless Seattle.
I was.
Great.
Lack of vitamin D.
Great movie. And with that, we have some great questions
You do.
and some other fun insights that we will all pull together in this time.
Yes, social media is something that I have been studying for seminary. I'm actually doing a project, so I've been secretly running tests and experiments upon your various habits.
Sounds so official.
Some of you have filled out the social media poll that I sent out about a month ago, so I'm going to refer to that a little bit. But we'll jump into the questions here, and I'll ask Molly the first one, since she was present. And this first question from Blake in Ohio says, is not having social media at all wrong? Does it separate oneself from the culture in a negative way? So if I don't have social media, is it bad?
Is it bad? Yeah, we had at least 3 or 4 or more questions that all communicated that same idea of like, okay, I don't necessarily use social media all the time. Is it bad? Kind of under the assumption of, do I need to have social media in order to glorify Jesus? I want you to know, you can rest. You do not have to get social media and use it
Not at all.
in order to love Jesus and to follow him. He does not require that of you, thankfully. So if you are not actively engaged in social media, please do not feel bad. Give yourself some grace, and that is a decision that you are free to make. Kreger did talk yesterday, and he did want to make sure that everyone knew that he was stressing for those of us who use social media, and when we do engage with social media, this is how we can use it to glorify God. So not the opposite of like you need social media to glorify God, but when you use it, here is some practical ways of how we can use it to glorify God. And he went in and talked about a passage in Galatians 5 and also in Corinthians when it talks about the different aspects of love. And those are both very helpful passages. So if you haven't listened to Kreger's message, please go on our Facebook page and find that message because as we get on social media, he is essentially giving us questions to ask ourselves before we post of, does this post represent or embody or communicate the fruits of the Spirit? Does it communicate peace and patience and kindness and goodness and gentleness and faithfulness and self-control? And in the same way, does this communicate love? Because we know that God is love and we know that Jesus is love. Does this communicate not boasting and not envying and trusting and persevering and is not self-seeking and all those different things? And if your post is boasting, as you're looking at it, if it is something that is creating envy or jealousy or being divisive, then that is when we can think twice about what we're posting and change it so that we are glorifying God. So as many of you know, with Instagram especially, there are lots of filters that you can choose to put over your pictures and to enhance it or change it or whatever. And so Kreger was saying those 2 passages are the filters that Jesus wants us to put on our minds as we are going to post things and engage with social media. And many of you guys wrote down on your sticky notes that you were really excited to start using those filters and ask yourself those questions because you had never thought of that before.
It's true. And some social media poll numbers show us that 96% of you are on social media. So 4% of you are not, which is not a bad thing at all.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with Molly. It is not important to have a social media. The reason we're having this conversation is because most of you do. And we just want to talk to you about, how we can apply biblical principles to your social media life. Another question from the poll was, what do you use social media for? The options were connecting with friends, which is 48% of you. showing people my life, which was none. To find a girlfriend, boyfriend, none. News, 4%. To feel connected, 26%. But then all of the above, 22%. So 22% of you want to connect with friends, triple your life, find a girlfriend, boyfriend, see the news, and feel connected.
There you go.
All through social media.
All of that. And we talked about a lot of pros and cons of social media yesterday. So you can also find that on our video of just things that, you know, it is helpful for connecting with people and getting the word out. All these, especially with the fire, you know, in the past couple of weeks and different tragedies that happened. GoFundMe is a big social media campaign that is doing lots of good, you know, so it's not, social media is not all good or all bad. But
and
we
the GroupMe has been great. That's
GroupMe is great. We love that a lot of, you know, students, if they're working during Sunday morning, they can listen to our SML talks later and the podcast and all that jazz. So we are extra grateful for the platform that social media gives, but that doesn't mean that we, or I guess we should still be extra purposeful in how we engage with it.
Yeah.
So Luke, I got a question for you.
Okay.
This one, nope, not that one. Sorry, I'm getting confused between all the questions on all these sticky notes. Is it possible to post anything political and still follow the fruits of the Spirit? So the ones that I just kind of listed through, if you have some examples on that.
Great question from Todd in Springfield. This is actually one that I've had first-hand encounter with because I have done that myself. Have posted things that were borderline political, debatable stuff on my
about counterculture.
Yeah,
topics.
countercultural issues like
Stuff
I said,
we're talking
not
about
tax
now.
stuff and various, you know, how to run Parks and Rec kind of activities. But you know, countercultural things that have, for me, for the most part, have gone into, there actually, you know, have been good solutions and people have had interesting conversations, and I've actually had people private message me, and we've gone out and gotten coffee and talked
That's great.
further, and they've always been good conversations. So for both challenging and encouraging sides of it. I've had conversations with Gregor about this. We actually went and got coffee, and we talked about how, you know, Facebook
How to
and
do that well, yeah.
our differences and how we kind of viewed it, and that was super important and helpful. So that it's always would be the end goal would to be to have a face-to-face conversation if you're really passionate with someone, and you want to get, you know, your idea or talk about your idea with someone. So yeah, but then the negative part of it is that, yeah, you can't, I'm a pretty sarcastic guy. I say a lot of things with a little bit of like trying to be funny, I guess, in some weird way. And you can't really, just like when you're texting someone, we use you know, like emojis because we're trying to always, you know, it's vastly different. Like if I'm talking with Jamie or something and I don't use certain emojis that are just, you don't understand that person. Like we, you know, we use winky faces and smiles and all that, you know, hug, whatever. And it's supposed to show because you
emoji.
can't, you know, everyone knows, especially young kids know that it's hard to put personality into a text or a Facebook status
and
or
I don't
Twitter.
think it was meant, you know, ever really meant to be that way. It was meant that we still needed the face-to-face.
You need it. You need it for sure. And you got to be able to just be able to look someone in the white of the eyes, because we all become just, we're not the same people we are behind a keyboard. It's just, that's for all of us. We say stuff that we don't mean sometimes, or we say too much or whatever. So it's tough when you want to talk about things that require conversation. Social media is not necessarily the best place to do that because you can't get that across. But you do have a massive audience. And that's what I think people are kind of addicted to and like, is that it gets seen. Which is a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like you talked about, when spreading news, great thing. When trying to have like really delicate conversations, usually a lot of people just read into it, get offended, and assume.
And
so
hurt. Yeah.
good luck with that. I mean, tell me how many times you've seen a conversation on Facebook that was a debate that where you see people going, you know what, you're right. Yep, you're right. Good talk. Let's handshake. You know, that'll happen in real life though.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen a million times with people that I completely disagreed with via Facebook and then talk to them face to face, and it was perfect. Things went great, and we shook hands, and everyone was happy.
That's and it was interesting yesterday. Kreger was saying, you know, like the root issue behind social media of why we even post at the core is to be known and to know others, you know, and that desire to be known is such a good desire. And so even for the desire for your opinion to be known by hundreds of people or maybe even thousands, like, yeah, but will, you know, posting this really achieve that desire of being known. And even if it's to a big audience, I have to say a lot of times it ends up just leaving us empty at the end. So it's when we engage in these face-to-face and, you know, being present with each other interactions that I feel like that is when being known is accomplished and is experienced. Accomplished wasn't the right word there.
Well, it relates perfectly to a poll question I have is, do your social media accounts directly reflect your real life persona? And 73% of you said yes, they do reflect, but then there's 27% of you that say no, and that goes in accordance with another question that was actually, does social media make you depressed about your life? Only 5% of you said yes, 50 said no, and then 45% of you said sometimes. Sometimes social media does, in fact, make you depressed about your life.
And that's what one of the questions was actually about, you know, giving up social media for Lent, or is it okay to not use social media because I just think about what I'm missing, those sort of things. And I say, yeah, it's great to practice self-control and give it up for Lent, because the hope of giving it up would be to encounter Jesus and to encounter real connection. That's actually what I've been giving up for Lent. I still have been posting on the colonial stuff because we want to keep you guys updated, but I have given up the scrolling, the mindless scrolling, and going on my my private accounts. And so with that, what I've sought to do is to write letters to friends instead, and thanking them for how they've encouraged me and been present in my life, and in seeking true connection through a letter rather than looking at someone's life and I probably won't ever really talk to them. And so I would encourage you guys of like, if you are having, you know, a season and a time in your life, which is completely normal, where social media is not helping you, be creative. Think about how you can, truly connect with people, because the goal isn't to be on social media or not to be on social media. The goal is to be known and to be known and loved. And that is possible when you're with another person and looking into their eyes. And so rather than spending more time looking at our screen, like, let's look at people's eyes and make some eye contact today.
Right. And even you guys, we just said about that being known. One of the questions was, is it wrong to use social media to occasionally complain, expecting to get solutions in the comments? And to point off to that, I would say not necessarily wrong, but not the best place by any means. And that's why we love youth group, because it's based on the idea of as many times as we can within the week in your busy schedules, getting together and being in community where you, instead of looking for comments or via, you know, online, and you're getting random solutions from your second cousin who doesn't know anything about
who
your
knows
life.
What those
So you're with the people and you're breaking bread with people that you see every day, or have common,
or that you know love Jesus and want that for you, want your best.
Super important. So I mean, if you guys are looking for solutions, that's great.
Don't go to social media.
Let's look for those among each other and among, you know, your leaders in your church. But we understand totally that temptation and pressure is like we all. But it's, I mean, so there's issues like that. But then maybe you'll see like mothers or something like, my 2-year-old won't go to sleep or something. That's great, and that's what's the cool thing about social media, is that you get to see your family and ask stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and I think with that, like, Kreger actually spoke to this. You know, is it wrong to use social media to complain? You know, he was saying, you know, it's case by case situation. But at the end of the day, what you're posting on social media, have you already brought that before the Lord? And I mean, I have to ask myself that too, of like, okay, I have this really heavy thing on my heart and I really just want to go talk to all my friends about it. But whether that's in person or via social media, but like, have I truly brought that before the Lord and just said, Lord, this is where I'm at. This is what's hard for me right now. This is my heart, you know, this is what I'm frustrated with. This is where I'm angry, like all those different things, and truly practicing that verse in 2 Peter where it talks about casting our cares on the Lord. And then, you know, if you feel like you need to post it afterwards, go for it, but don't substitute posting on social media for praying and being able to get that burden lifted off your shoulders, because Jesus wants to talk to you about the things that you want to complain about. Like, Jesus, he is the most faithful friend. He is chosen to stay with all of us. So there's no amount of complaining that could push Jesus away. So you're like, oh, Jesus, I just don't want to burden him with this. Well, guess what? He's already signed up for it for eternity, and he is capable. You have no burden or no thing in your life that is too big for him. He is, let's not make our burdens bigger than our God.
Like that.
So
it's been carried.
It's been carried. Yeah. And he knew about it before you even knew you wanted to complain about it. So I think with that, I just find, Jesus wants to give you healing and he wants to give you solutions. And he wants to give you that in the context of relationship. That's how he did it in the Bible. People, he was in crowds, but he met the person one-on-one, and that's what he wants to do among our community too. And so if there's something that you really feel like you want to complain about on social media, come find Gregor or me or Luke or your D group leader or your home church leader or something, and they would love to just listen to you and understand your heart and support you and point you to Jesus.
Absolutely. And I think maybe Gregor pointed on this about the depression side of it. Where we get super bogged down and we just constantly, like you said, the scrolling, looking at people's lives. Remember, that the same with that filters. Everyone is just saying, I'm going to give you a snapshot of the best side of me.
Yeah.
And we're all kind of slightly lying about things. We're always kind of just, we pick a shot out, or we're putting a photo or a status or Twitter or Snapchat, whatever. It's all just, we're showing you what we want you to see. And it's different when you're with someone face to face. You get to pick up on all the different things about that person instead of you're getting what exactly they have. So then we look at Facebook and we go, wow, this person has a great life. Everything I see is just like, man, my life is so boring. I'm so behind. It's so lame. When it's just not true. It couldn't be farther from the truth. So if social media is doing the opposite effect, we talk a lot about sometimes the positive things, but if it is doing something like making you depressed or making you stumble or just not being beneficial to your life, then cut it out, cut that off, get rid of it. Jesus said it's much better to just, even if it feels like it's your own hand, even if you feel like cutting social media out is like losing a part of your being, which I'm sure it could. We get addicted to those things. It needs to be removed because it's not creating any of the spirits of Christ or of anything good in your life. It's not helping the fruits. So. Yeah.
And with that, Krieger had talked about, social media is so much about like, oh, this is representing me and my life and communicating that to the world. And it can be so relieving to be like, okay, if I could use my social media just to, represent the fruit of the Spirit and Jesus to the world, like it's not about me necessarily anymore. And yes, it is what Jesus is doing in my life. And that doesn't mean you have to post Bible verses all the time, but, but it just means of like, are you thinking of how what you're posting is going to impact other people? Or, we've all seen stuff where we, seen stuff that other people have posted and it's produced, for me, it's produced jealousy in me or it's produced anger in me or all these different things. And not to say that we're responsible for all the responses of everyone, but I think it's thoughtful to think of like, okay, is this going to help or hurt those that are following me and wanting to be uplifting and wanting to encourage.
And I just want to say this last thing, this side note, for those of you that do, want to use social media as a platform, the way I kind of think of it sometimes is like a blog sometimes, in allowing for the people that follow you or are friends with you or whatever to kind of have that understanding that when you do post something that might be controversial or political or countercultural, just instead of, because the issue with me is I continue to post things in that nature, but instead of sometimes being a reactant, like reacting to something quickly, just take the extra time to do some research on whatever it is you're trying to say, make sure it's well written. You can't just, instead of just doing like one-liners, just try to think about, okay, how would someone interpret this if there was an article or something? So I think people will respect that a lot more too. If you have something to say and you really look like you've taken the time and you've put in some resources and you've cited some things and you're asking questions and just have a general openness.
That learner posture.
And you're actually asking people to comment and you want to learn, because that's a good place to learn. Like you can learn a lot. People will be more transparent about their life stories sometimes. So it's not entirely bad. So don't be too afraid. But I say if you're going to do it, you really have to challenge yourself to go the extra mile and take your time and say, don't say false things either. Make sure your sources are right. So
yeah. And just to wrap us up here, we did have one question or a couple questions about parents and what if your parents say that you shouldn't have social media and their restrictions on that. And we would just say, as we're talking about social media and really all these topics in the counterculture series, you may be surrounded with your parents or siblings or different people who think differently than how we're talking about it, and that's okay. And so we want to be able to engage in conversation, and maybe some of these SML talks and podcasts can be helpful ways to start a conversation with them. Maybe there's misunderstanding of like, oh, they don't want me to have social media, or they don't want me to do this. Maybe it's not necessarily they don't want you to have social media, but they do want you to connect with them, and so being able to understand more of where people are coming from, and hopefully these different resources can be helpful to start those conversations with your parents or with your siblings or with your friends, because at the end of the day, like, we all need to learn, and we want to connect, and we want to know where people are coming from. So if you are in a situation where you feel like the people around you do not have the same views as you do on social media, that is okay. And I would encourage you to ask questions of, how did you come to that point? What experiences brought you there? This is what my experience is. How can we come to understand each other more on this?
Great.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this has been helpful.
Hopefully.
And, if you have a friend who doesn't have social media stuff, you can take some of this knowledge and share it with them. Just about the parents. But respect your parents, honor your parents, and you're not missing. Our goal is to always, everything we say here is to be said in person. So just another tool for all of you out there, the 96%. But if you're that 4, that's great. Probably better off.
Yes, and we will be having our devotional coming out soon, so look for that. Yes. And we are excited for this week of learning, and then next week Craig will be back, but talking about human trafficking. So we will jump into another topic.
Awesome. Have a good day, everybody.
Adios.